Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Monday, August 5th. We're going to take a look at SPY and QQQ today. So these are the levels that we've had on the chart for SPY, and we'll flip over to QQQ in a minute. We've had these levels on both of those charts for several months, and it's now just sort of starting to work its way through. So you see this Fibonacci extension levels, and it topped out pretty darn close to what we had there. It came within a little over $2, $2.04 of the level that we had here, which is pretty solid given what we had to go off of, which was just an extension. And pulling back now through this 514 level, but it didn't quite dip down to that 506.92 yet. We'll see how that persists as time goes on. If we zoom in today to the 10-minute, we see this is what those levels look like off of that, holding up pretty darn well. You see this near miss in the pre-market, and then it built right up over that 514.60 and then reconfirmed support on it and tried to move off of it, and that's sort of where it is at the moment. So we'll see what that looks like as time goes on. Obviously there's a gap up here now, but if it does come down and loses that 514, certainly there could be more trouble there for the bulls. You know, the question that I have at the moment, and we'll talk about this more when we flip over to the Think or Swim study, is this a relatively short-lived flash in the pan? You know, some sort of pullback that needed to occur, take a breather, take a bigger bite out of the apple, and then sort of, you know, carry on back to business as usual, or is it something more than that? We'll see. Now I'm going to stay on the daily here for now at least. QQQ, this is what that sort of same situation looked like, the extension levels that we put in. It came within here, you know, a bit of a further miss, but I mean, looking at the chart, it looks like pretty solid scope there on that 510.23. Came down, tried to hold that like 466 level, just couldn't, and then has just sort of slipped through. Now here, this miss in today at that 422.07, a little bit tighter for sure. We see it dip to 420 there in the pre-markets, and then you know, pushing off of here and then moving through a couple of these levels. So right now it's about 1:30 at the moment Eastern time, trying to sort of either regain, that's for, what is this level here, 438.93 or so, or reconfirm it as resistance and maybe trickle through the rest of the day. We'll see what that looks like. Now, of other note on this Webull chart, before we flip over to the Think or Swim, are the EMAs. So if we take to the daily here on the EMA, we see right now QQQ trying to regain that 183 EMA right here, which is what it had lost previously. That's situated right now 436.23. If we zoom out to the weekly for a moment, see it looks very different, right? On the weekly, you know, it's not so dissimilar from what we saw here in the sense that this is pushing down to or through the 34 EMA, and it really threatened at this point in time to throw a bearish crossover on the EMAs, right? It came down and just, you know, really quickly sort of bounced off of that, the 8 bouncing off of the 21 there, so sort of refusing that bearish crossover. Now, this is on the weekly, so this is sort of what I try to zoom out to when we get these big, you know, sudden feeling moves. So we're getting something similar now, like this 8 is getting mighty close to throwing a bearish crossover on the 21 EMA. It's slipped, trying to sort of hold on by a wick at the moment to the 34 EMA. So this does look a little dippier than that did, but you just sort of take into consideration that 8 and 21, you know, it still has the potential to sort of throw something that looks relatively similar. Now, SPY looks a little bit better, if we want to call it that, in some heavy air quotes. But back here, we did get that bearish crossover, and it did totally lose the 34. And then, you know, we saw a bunch of gains that came after that. So if you would have bought that around 410 or so, you know, you could have rode that up to 565. So, and that's in a relatively short period of time. Now, the pullback right now, trying to hold on SPY the 34 EMA. So, you know, a little bit of a different look there. Obviously, the 8 threatening a bearish crossover again on the 21. We'll see if that happens. And then if we zoom into the daily here, again, bearish crossovers here, but we do see this has not yet touched or reached the 183. So a little bit different look EMA wise on the QQQ versus SPY, but that's not so uncommon for sure, as tech can tend to take sort of a bigger bludgeoning. But 507.31 is where that 183 sits now. That to me is sort of an all-important level. But who knows if it's going to sort of pull back to that level. For right now, at least, it's looking as though this sudden sell-off and the entrance of institutions and buyers and retail and whomever into the market today seem to be taking this as a buy the dip situation. Now, if that persists or not, that's certainly going to be a question for this week to sort out. A lot to do there for sure. Flipping over here to the think or swim side of things, this is what the daily looks like on SPY. So you see quite far out of the channel at the moment, further out of the channel than we've seen it in quite some time, right? So that's either disturbing if you're a bull, or you could sort of see it as an opportunity for it to gain entry back into the channel. But the question is always, when does that happen and how does it happen? Meaning, does it just kind of move sideways or sideways and slightly down and just continues to drag the channel down with it, and eventually it sort of makes a re-entry? That's sort of a sad way to re-enter for the bulls. Bulls would much rather see, obviously, a re-entry that's just sort of a ladder back up into the channel and, pressing at least toward the mid-range of this channel here, this bright blue line. But that's what it looks like on the daily. On the weekly here, you get a little bit of a different view. Here, still in the channel. And it had spent a lot of time out, again, this is on the weekly, so this is kind of impressive, spent a lot of time outside of the channel on the upper bound of the channel. So came down, retested the mid-range of the channel, and did a good job pushing off it again, and was once again out of the upper bound of the channel. So just a ton of bullish momentum that had been exhausted and now is taking a breather. But, for this setup, still within the wave cloud, still within the channel for sure. That lower bound of the channel is down there at 501.19 at the moment. And so we'll see how that persists on the weekly. Now, if we switch here to the QQQ, if you're more interested in that, we can start here on the weekly. Again, this is actually also still in the channel and had spent some time outside of the upper bound of the channel for a while as well. Topped out at 503.52 up here, and then pulling back in using the lower bound of the channel, at least for now, as support. You do see the oscillator down here, the phase oscillator, turning red. So we'll see how that plays out, or if that has any persistent quality to it. But right now, it's staying within the channel on the weekly. Now it's going to look different on the daily for sure, as we just saw with SPY, right? So similar to SPY here, which just sort of way out here in no man's land, kind of free floating in space. And even the candle prior to this one was also out of the channel, but a little less free floating in space, as it had made wick contact with the lower bound of the channel. But not today's candle. Today's candle certainly out here free floating, and you see the oscillator here working through several levels of the bearish or selling phase of the oscillator. So we'll see how dippy that gets, because at some point here it's going to be outside of the channel and it's going to get so low on the oscillator. You would tend to look at that point for some sort of reversion, even if it is retracing for a brief period of time, to just sort of relax all of the bearish momentum that has been sort of set in place, especially if, maybe the foreseen catalyst or the sort of mental gymnastics that had been done to get to this level. Not saying that they are mental gymnastics, but the degree to which people just en masse agreed oh, okay, it's mass selling time. If that is relatively short-lived and it doesn't have much staying power, then maybe we see those things sort of coming to a strong confluence and providing some restabilization or retracement, even if it is just for a period of time. But yeah, quite out of the channel here at the moment. So we'll see how this looks. But zooming in again, even with the big moves today, I do feel pretty good about how these levels are holding up, and we do still have levels on here, but as these bounce off pretty nicely, try to hold some, try to wrestle with some. You know, we do have down here to 492 on SPY and down here to 394 on QQQ, and certainly if things move beyond that in either direction, we could come back and take a look if folks are interested. All right, folks, I hope that your trading week is off to a good start. Feels weird to say that, but I'll say it anyway. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.